All right, next one. Shaving your dog's coat keeps them cooler.
That is false. And a lot of people think that, especially I'm from Texas, misconception.
Yeah.
You can actually really harm some pets because their coats are made, either they're created with a lot of oil to like keep off different types of moisture or things. So you can actually harm them if you shave certain breeds. So definitely consult with your veterinarian before completely shaving your pet.
Yeah, agreed. From CareCredit, it's Care Experts, a podcast where we dive deep into the health and pet care industry with the professionals that make it happen. I'm Antonio Diaz, and this is Logan. Whether you're soaking up the sun or living somewhere warm year-round, understanding how to spot and prevent heat stroke could mean the difference between a happy day and a trip to the emergency vet. Today, we're joined by Dr. Tannetje Crocker, an emergency veterinarian and practice owner in Fort Worth, Texas. Dr. Crocker is here to help us keep our pets safe, cool, and thriving all summer long. Welcome, Dr. Crocker. I am so grateful to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.
I'm very excited to be here and talk about these topics today because heat stroke is devastating. It's devastating for the pets and for the owners. So I'm glad we're bringing awareness, and we're going to just get more into it about the signs, treatments, and all that. But yes, to back it up, I'm an emergency veterinarian and love what I do. I've been an ER exclusive vet for about 6 years, but I actually used to do equine medicine back in the day. I did small animal GP, and I own my own GP hospital. I just don't work in it every day. I work emergency, and I love it.
I have a game I want to play with you.
I'm excited.
If you're game.
I like a challenge, you know.
Okay,
like
cool. Yeah,
type
this is our
A
icebreaker game. So we have some situations I'm going to describe. I'll throw some common summer pet advice, and then you tell us if it's true or if it's a myth that we should toss out the window.
Okay.
Ready? All right. Dogs sweat through their tongues.
That is not true.
Okay.
I'm just trying to like imagine like all the sweat coming out. No, they do cool themselves down by panting. And so I think that's probably where that misconception comes from, but they don't literally sweat from their tongue.
All right, next one. Shaving your dog's coat keeps them cooler.
That is false. And a lot of people think that, especially I'm from Texas, misconception. You can actually really harm some pets because their coats are made, either they're created with a lot of oil to like keep off different types of moisture or things. So you can actually harm them if you shave certain breeds. So definitely consult with your veterinarian before completely shaving your pet.
Yeah, agreed. I had a client years ago who shaved her Pomeranian.
No.
And I live in Vegas, so big mistake. And you know
it will never go back the same.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. Like the coat looked really weird. But yeah, their vet told them immediately what a big mistake that was. So yeah, a lot of people think that shaving their dog's coat, especially breeds like Huskies or even Golden Retrievers, that it's going to help them. And it actually the opposite, because it cools them down. Which,
and the problem is too, then they think, oh, well, they're okay to like be outside more because they're shaved, when that's not true. So it actually gives you like a false sense of security, which is even more dangerous when we're talking about things like heat stroke.
Yeah. So, dogs can get sunburned.
They can, actually. That is true. A lot of times you'll see it on their bellies because they lay in the sun. So dogs that don't have like thick coats, and they actually can get actually little sun cancer spots. And so you do need to be careful if your pet does a lot of sunbathing to check them frequently for little masses on their skin, and definitely keep an eye on them.
Gotcha. And I would say they can probably especially get sunburned if they've shaved their coat.
Yes. Or if they're a hairless breed.
Okay, yeah. All right, next one. Ice water is dangerous for overheated pets.
That is true. You do not want to douse your pet in ice water. You're already having an issue with blood flow if they are getting overheated. And you can actually cause extreme vasoconstriction if you dunk them in ice water. And that will cause decreased blood flow to vital organs sometimes and mess them up even more. So absolutely don't do it. You can offer them cool water to drink, but you don't want to sink them or submerge them in ice water at all.
Okay. All right, next fact.
Am I doing
fiction.
okay? I'm passing. Okay.
Yeah, you're doing great. All right, a wet bandana around the neck actually helps dogs cool down.
No, I mean, it's adorable. It's cute, but that would be false. It's not going to help them cool down because, again, they don't cool through their skin like we do, and by sweating, they cool by panting. That's the most common way.
Gotcha. Okay, so everybody who goes off on Amazon and buys those pet cooling, bandanas, waste of money.
It's not gonna do what you think it's gonna do.
Okay.
So
interesting. I just learned something new.
Well,
I don't have any bandanas for the dogs. But
I was gonna say I don't I mean, Logan, are you a bandana guy? I don't
But
know.
I would have assumed, I mean, if someone said, hey, we got this bandana for our dog, we, it's a cooling bandana, I would have said, yeah, it makes sense. Keep him cool,
I don't think it hurts, but I don't think
Yeah.
it cools the body
I
temperature.
got you. All right. Small dogs handle heat better than big dogs.
I would say that's maybe true and false. Overweight dogs don't handle heat as well. So if
Okay.
you think about like bigger dogs are probably more likely to be obese in certain breeds, flat-faced breeds.
Yep.
So I wouldn't necessarily say that's true though size-wise, because if you think about it, the most common dogs we see are like Frenchies getting
Yeah.
overheated, and they are definitely not big dogs.
Okay.
So, but an obese dog is going to have a harder time cooling down.
Cool. Well, thank you for clearing those up.
Yay.
All right, let's jump into the topic. So
Okay.
what exactly is heat stroke?
Heat stroke is when the body gets an elevated temperature, which is actually really interesting. Do you know what the average temp or what would be too high in a pet?
Yeah, the average is about 101, 102, and higher, I would say about 104 is when we're in danger.
That is great. So a lot of times people come in and we'll be like, oh, the temp's 101. And they're like, because kids, you'd freak out if your kid had that.
absolutely, yeah.
That would be a fever. Really normal dogs are usually 102.5 and less. Excited dogs that have been outside for a little bit, they might be 103, 104. But if they're consistently over 104, and usually our heat stroke dogs are actually 106 and up,
Oh, wow.
their internal temperature is too high.
Okay. And if a dog is overheating, what should we not do?
So you want to immediately get them somewhere that's cool, get them on a cool floor. You don't want to douse them in ice water, and you don't want to try to do anything that's going to bring their temperature down too quickly. So
Okay.
really we recommend a cool floor, a fan in front of them, because that cooler air is going to help, not like full force, but a fan to kind of help circulate air, and then offering them cooler water to drink.
Okay.
And really, if you do those things pretty quickly and they don't already have any issues with like breathing, respiratory system, they should cool down pretty rapidly.
Okay.
But if you wait too long and they're overheated, they can start to have some massive issues again with their blood pressure. They can have some bleeding issues internally. It shocks their intestines, so you'll see vomiting and diarrhea. So if you're seeing any of that and you think your pet's overheated, you should just immediately go to the veterinarian and not try to do anything at home.
Sure. Now, if somebody's offering their pet water, but their pet isn't drinking, is that a sign that it's reached a point where they should absolutely get to an emergency
I
vet?
would say so. And honestly, like if your pet is really out of it and is just panting like crazy and they don't seem to be cooling down on their own and they don't want to drink anything, if you have a thermometer, I would just take a rectal temp real quick if you can. And if it is 105, 106 higher, I would take him to the vet.
Gotcha.
I'd get him there as fast as you can.
So what other symptoms would you say are prevalent when a person should know that they should be bringing their pet to the emergency?
Because the panting's the way they cool down, if you are actively trying to cool them down inside the air conditioning and it's been, I would say 15, 20 minutes and they're still just panting and really lethargic, I think it would probably be worth considering taking them in, because we know the quicker we act, the better we can prevent any signs. Now, if they cool down, but then all of a sudden they're off their food, if they vomited, if they start to have loose stool, more extreme signs would be if you actually see little evidence of bleeding under the skin. So if you start to see little spots under their skin, any of those things would mean you need to go in immediately. It's really hard for us to explain to pet owners what could happen with it, because so much of it is internal and so much of it is things that unless you're really trained to see these things, you don't know. And unless you can take a rectal temperature, you don't know. If you have any sort of flat-faced breed, I would be even more quick to go to the emergency hospital, because we do know that they already have a harder time oxygenating, so they're going to have a bigger deficit in their body if they get overheated. So it's worth checking them out, because the worst thing I tell owners is you come in and I say, yeah, it looks like they got overheated, they're doing okay, they don't have any of the other more significant side effects, let's just give you something to try to prevent any diarrhea and take them home and watch them, right?
Okay. Yeah. Are pale gums something that would an owner would see on their dog?
They could be. It causes a shock to the system. So during different stages of it, you could see really pale gums, or you could see gums that are brighter pink. Again, that is something, it's actually a great point. If owners can start looking at their pets' gums when they're normal, healthy, and get a baseline, it helps them a lot, because I'll have people say, well, what color are their gums? And they're like, I don't know. I never look at their gums. So if they start doing that now, it kind of helps them in the future, if they're worried about them, to kind of give more information if they call the emergency hospital.
Wow. So if a person brings their dog to you, what should they what would be some things that you would be doing on your end if you know that this dog is pretty much reaching the end or, the worst part of a heat stroke?
It depends on where they are in the process, but right off the bat, we're going to place an IV catheter and get IV fluids in them because we know blood pressure is a huge issue, and we know that the shock can cause lack of blood flow to vital organs. So we need to maintain that blood pressure. And IV fluids are cool. So it's cooling the body internally too, which is helpful. We'll often give them things to calm them down if we need to, especially if they're a brachycephalic and they're breathing really heavy because they're making it worse. We give them oxygen supplementation, again, to try to get oxygen to those vital organs, try to prevent secondary issues. And then if they start having blowout diarrhea, vomiting, we can give things to stop the vomiting, to help with the diarrhea. It's a lot of different things depending on how severe it is.
One thing I want to touch on too is you mentioned earlier how short-faced dogs or brachycephalic dogs like Frenchies, probably the most common dog you see come in an emergency situation for heat stroke. What would be, let's say, like your top 3 or top 5?
So Frenchies are the most common in the ER, period, because they tend to have a couple different things. But yes, heat stroke, any brachycephalic, so Frenchies, bulldogs, and then in Texas, we have a lot of micro bullies, which are like the pit bull looking ones that are really muscular, that have been bred specifically to have shorter snouts and be smaller and shorter to the ground. So those are the most common ones that we see come in. And unfortunately are the ones that have the most significant side effects because of the way that their respiratory system works.
Okay. Now, are there any breeds that you've seen come in that you wouldn't expect?
I mean, honestly, I don't think there's a breed I haven't seen come in. And, I'd like to say, oh, well, it's brachycephalics mainly, or it's, big dogs mainly. But just the other day, we had a Schnauzer come in. So I think that it can be almost any dog, unfortunately, depending on the circumstance. And so there are things that pet owners need to be aware of. We obviously try to have them exercise their pets really early in the morning or really late at night when the sun's not as high and Texas is not as hot. And then just watching your dog, if they are slowing down, if they're really panting hard, give them a break, give them some water, get them in the shade, get them inside, and just let them cool down and don't push it.
So as far as water goes and being prepared, is there a minimum amount of water that you would recommend somebody bring for their pets?
Ooh, that's a good question. So they definitely have a certain water requirement based on their weight for the whole day. And then obviously if they're expending more energy during certain times, they would need more. I wouldn't be able to say a whole general amount because I'd have to sit and actually do some math calculations based on the weight of the dog. What I would say is, bring enough that you think you'll have a little bit left over and for you and your dog. And it's really dependent on the walk, right? Are you going around the block? You probably don't need to bring water if you're just going around the block. If you're going on a hike up in the mountains, I'd probably bring a gallon if you can. And that way they have access to what they need and you have access to what you need. So there's not a set amount that I can think of, but that would be a great question for your veterinarian because they could calculate what your pet needs throughout the day based on their weight, and then I'd probably bring at least a third of that if you could.
Gotcha. Now, quick question, maybe a little off topic, but speaking of heat, right? If somebody feeds their dog and decides to go on a hike shortly after, do you think it would aid in creating heat stroke?
I think that I would be worried if it was a really intense hike.
I see.
I would give them a little bit of time to digest, if possible. But if they're a fit dog and they're used to exercising a lot and they're used to eating, whatever size meal they normally do, it's probably not as big of a deal. I think the big issue, again, is with certain breeds that are more prone to reflux or issues like Frenchies, like bulldogs. If you feed them a ton and then you take them out and they get slightly hot and they're breathing quickly, they have a huge propensity to regurgitate, then aspirate it, then go into more respiratory distress. So certain breeds, definitely do not feed them a big meal.
Gotcha. I've learned a lot about Frenchies on this show.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Thank you so much. This conversation has been amazing, and I don't want to end it, but we have to. So thank you so much for your time and your expertise.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
My pleasure. Whoa. Don't leave yet. I just want to say, if you want to hear more about health and pet care, check out these episodes of Care Experts. Also, before you go, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. New episodes drop every Wednesday. You don't want to miss it.